So maybe to help us feel a little bit better. I don't know.
At least give us something.
Give us something that we could look forward to. But we're going to go to the Comcast Business Hotline because Baseball Hall of Famer Paul Hagen does a great job covering the Philadelphia Phillies for NBC Sports Philadelphia. What's going on, Paul?
Not too much. Just waiting to get over to the ballpark and see what happens.
Yeah, and see what happens. Well, let's talk a little bit about last night before we move forward to Game 4. What is going on with the bats on this Philadelphia Phillies baseball team?
Well, I think a couple things. One is that this team has been very streaky all year. They, especially the last month, they seem to score a ton of runs or no runs. I think they can be pitched to, but even inside that, I think what's happening is what if I'm the Phillies, what I'm trying to do right now is get into their bullpen. Their bullpen is pretty cooked. They've had success against the bullpen, but as Kyle Schwarber pointed out last night, hey, if the starting pitcher is throwing strikes, you're not going to just sit there and take strikes down the middle. So they are not really grinding out at bats the way they have in the past. And as a result, they haven't been able to get to the bullpen before it's too late, frankly.
That's the point, Paul. I mean, you're getting to that bullpen, but it doesn't matter because their starters are going 7 strong. And the third time through, you're not seeing the adjustments. And I think that's always the big tell for me. When a guy is seeing the starting pitcher, in this case it was Manaea, the third time through, and you still didn't see anything, I think that's it. And a lot of people have been calling in, and we've been talking about as well with the approach. And I can lament Alec Boehm's approach or lack thereof all day and night. But really, as a whole, are there adjustments you think that these guys, the big bats certainly, need to make while in that own at bat, right? Like, so you're starting out, it's 0-1, you've swung, whether it was a bad pitch, whatever, just to get something going, because I feel like the approach has just been a little bit off.
Well, I mean, the one thing that really jumped out to me from last night was 6th inning, Phillies are only down 2-0. Manaea walks the first 2 batters, Schwarber and Turner. So runners on first and second, nobody out. 8 of his last 9 pitches are balls. Mm-hmm. Harper and Castellanos swing at the next 6 pitches. They didn't take 1 pitch. And I think that is what happens when you get a little frustrated. But the bottom line to me is, I think, if they're saying, and I think that there's something to this, well, we can't work counts because the pitcher's throwing strikes, well, then you got to hit the strike.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. If that's your excuse, then hit what they're throwing you.
Yeah, you have to. And, you know, there's a team on the other side, too. Those are good pitchers. But, you know, if you're the Phillies and you look at how much they're paying these guys, not that means that they have to succeed every time, but they got that money because they're supposed to be really good. And right now they're just not, especially in the first 5 innings. They're not getting ahead. You know, they're having to play from behind. And I think what you saw in the 6th with Harper and Castellanos last night was hitters who got a little over-anxious, trying to be a hero, you know, got out of the game a little bit.
Yeah, we're talking about the bats, but let's talk about that Phillies bullpen, because you mentioned that the Phillies want to get to the Mets bullpen.
Do we have to?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, Paul.
I know, but this Phillies bullpen, what's going on with the pen, and does Rob Thompson still have faith in Jeff Hoffman?
He would, of course, tell you that he does. I mean, I think the fact that he let Aaron Nola load the bases with nobody out last night gives you a little bit of an indication of how reluctant he is to go to the bullpen right now. You know, last year and the last 2 years, actually, he was very quick on the trigger to pull a starter when the guy got in trouble. And I think that's the normal pattern you see in the postseason. But I think the fact that that he let Noel load the bases, including 2 walks, before he went to the pen, kind of tells you where he's at.
Paul, you've covered baseball for the better part of 50 years. I started out covering the Dodgers, 25 years covering the Phillies plus at this point. And just to see where we're at right now and where this season started and where it was. I mean, I talked to you earlier this summer, and obviously, you know, that's baseball is part of it. It's the 162. But you're thinking about the postseason, this team was primed and built for this time of year. Have you seen a team that's just been unable to really kind of come through in a way that's meaningful? Losing a Zach Wheeler start is nearly inexcusable when he goes out and pitches that gem. But then just to basically kind of turtle up last night and you just don't come. It's confounding. It's hard for me to kind of reconcile the team that I saw with what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I think the thing I keep going back to now is all the emphasis that was placed on getting off to a fast start this year. Mm-hmm. Rob Thompson talked about it constantly. You know, we got off to slow starts the last 2 years. We got to get off to a fast start this year, and they did. Record-wise and really with the eye test, for a while there, they were probably the best team in baseball. But it is a 162-game season, and I think you see this a lot. A team that jumps out to a big lead and isn't really challenged loses a little bit of edge. It's human nature, and I think the thing that's really struck me is, you know, they were 33-34 from July 13th to the end of the season. So they have not been that team for a long time. But when you talk to them, oh, we're a really good team. You know, we're resilient. We're this, we're that. Well, those are words, and those are good words, I guess. But in the end, you have to go out and do it. Mm-hmm. And I think they put themselves in a really tough position here. Dave Dombrowski told a story the other day about when he was the general manager of the Marlins. And he pointed out that Kevin Brown, who was one of the best pitchers in the National League at the time, lost 2 starts in the World Series to Chad Ojay, who was the Indians' number 4 starter. And the Marlins still won the World Series. So you don't know. But if you look at this pitching matchup tonight, Ranger Suarez has a 6.4 something ERA in his last 11 starts. And Quintana has an 0.74 in his last 6 starts and pitched 6 shutout innings in the wild card game against the Brewers. So on paper, this matchup couldn't be more lopsided.
Paul, we were hoping you were going to make us feel better with this phone call.
Well,
Paul brings the facts.
That's supposed to make you feel better.
It does. He said anything could happen.
Anything could happen. Well, let's take a look at tonight then. You have Quintana on the mound for the Mets. He's a left-hander. What do you think Rob Thompson does at second base, third base, left field, and center field?
Yeah, I think he's in a really tough position in that I believe his instinct is to go with defense, but when your team is not scoring, you almost have to go with offense, right? I mean, they have scored in the first 5 innings of these 3 games. They scored a total of 1 run, and that was on Schwarber's home run in the first at bat of the postseason. And they've done nothing in the first 5 innings since then. They're batting 140 as a team in the first 5 innings. So I think his instinct is defense, but I think he's almost forced to go offense at this point.
In some of those positions, I would think. Rojas probably center field still because he hasn't been a complete out at the plate regardless. Mm-hmm. But you take the good with the bad with him. Alec Boehm, we saw what happened. Game 2. Benched kinda, obviously came in later. His at-bats yesterday, very poor. What are the chances he's a starter at third?
I think you got to go with him.
Yeah.
I think they will, especially against a left-hander. But I suppose you could put Sosa over there and put Stott back at second. I mean, there's, I just feel like the way they have to score runs early. I looked up. I saw a stat last night. Something like 76-7 this year when they lead after 6 innings. Now, obviously, that has something to do with how well the bullpen was pitching earlier in the year. But I think they got to get a lead, score some runs early. It's easy to say, hard to do, but that's what they need to do.
Yeah, it is easier said than done with this Phillies team. At least that's the way it's looked through the first 3 games. We're talking to Paul Hagen. Does a great job covering the Phillies for the NBC Sports Philadelphia. Talking to him on the Comcast Business Hotline. Paul, last thing from me. What's going to happen tonight, man? Come on. Give me something good. What's going to happen
Look into
tonight?
the crystal ball.
Are we getting a Wheeler start? Game 5 back at Citizens Bank.
If I were a betting person, I would put everything I have on the Mets. But I've been doing this long enough to know that I don't bet because this is a very illogical game. And so many times in my life, I've looked at a pitching matchup and said, there's no way. I mean, this is just so one-sided, it's ridiculous. And it's gone the other way. And now we go back to the Kevin Brown thing again. So I would not be shocked if the Phillies won, but if you're telling me who has to be favored, I mean, it's got to be the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially the momentum going on their way and it being home and a chance to clinch it out. Before we let you go, Paul, you're in that clubhouse afterwards, and we saw that Rob Thompson came out and said he did talk to the group and obviously trying to keep them focused and motivated, and he is a player's type of manager. What is the vibe right there when you're walking into that clubhouse after a game like that?
Very quiet, very empty. There were not a lot of players out there willing to make themselves available to talk about this. I will say this for Nick Castellanos. He was right in front of his locker when we walked in and stood up and actually was pretty eloquent, I thought, about it, saying, hey, we got nothing left to lose now, so let's just go out and play our game. And that's kind of what they have to do.
That's the right attitude.
Paul, we appreciate
Thanks, Paul.
it, man. Hopefully we'll be talking again soon, meaning that there's more baseball to play.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
All
Thanks,
right.
Paul.
Talk to you soon. That was Paul Hagen. Does a great job covering the Phillies.